Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into your cold, scratchy tunic and plodding across a muddy courtyard as the first trumpet blast echoes off the castle walls. You blink, confused and half asleep, only to realize, yep, it's today. The siege has begun. Outside the stone towers, a haze of early morning mist swirls above the distant trees. Below that, rows of tents have bloomed like odd-colored mushrooms overnight, filled with soldiers who'd very much like to steal your home, your food, and probably your favorite goat. A second trumpet sounds. Someone yells, "To the walls!" And you're reminded, in this timeline, you're not a knight. You're not even a squire. You're just you, a bit underfed, slightly hungover, and definitely unqualified. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and local time. It's oddly cozy to know where we're all drifting off together from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your stiff limbs and stumble across the straw-covered floor toward the main stair. Your legs are sore from yesterday's drill, and someone definitely threw up in the hallway last night. That'll still be there tonight, probably. The hallway, not the vomit. Well, it may be the vomit, too. Outside, the portcullis groans closed with a resonant clang. You can already hear shouts from the towers. The guard captain barks something about ballistae and aiming higher this time. Apparently someone got a face full of bolt yesterday. Not great. Inside the castle, everything's a tangle of preparation. Baskets of arrows are dragged up staircases. Kids and dogs scramble underfoot. A woman with 6 braids and 1 shoe yells at a pig. Somewhere, someone's still making oatmeal. No war stops breakfast. That's one of the few constants across all of human history. Historians still argue whether most sieges actually started with dramatic trumpets, or if that's just the stuff of old tapestries in Hollywood. But they agree on this. Sieges were less like dramatic battles and more like very slow, increasingly disgusting standoffs. You're in for a month, maybe 2, of watching people shout insults from opposite walls and pretending boiled leather is soup. You climb a narrow spiral stair to the top of the South Tower. From here, the view is not exactly inspiring. The enemy camp looks like it's been busy all night. They've dug a few trenches, erected some temporary fencing, and, oddly enough, someone seems to be painting something on a banner. You hope it's not your face. Someone hands you a rusted helmet that smells like mildew and boiled onions. You put it on. It doesn't fit. You pretend it does. There's a definite squish. Here's your first job. Standing still. You lean against the crenellation, bow in hand, doing your best to look alert. But inside, your brain is spiraling through a series of questions. How long will this last? Will they try to scale the walls? Did you leave your boots by the fireplace again? A fellow watchman whispers, "Bet they're mercenaries. Real ones don't shout that much." He's probably right. Historians think a surprising number of medieval armies were made up of part-time soldiers, farmers and tradesmen lured into service by promises of coin, adventure, and maybe a pair of dry socks. You can relate. You haven't seen dry socks in days. You hear a loud creak. Someone below is raising the drawbridge fully now. A shield slips off the wall, clattering onto the stones, and everyone jumps. A few archers start laughing. You pretend to join in. And then, the strangest thing, silence. The kind that stretches out too long makes everyone fidget. No arrows, no drums, not even that guy with the hurdy-gurdy. The enemy's just watching. One old knight beside you mutters, "They're sizing us up." Or they lost the ladder. It's not helpful, but somehow comforting. The hours drag. You notice odd things. A wasp trapped in someone's helmet, a crow perched confidently on the tip of a pike, the smell of something suspiciously fishy wafting from the kitchens. Around noon, someone shouts, false alarm from the western tower, and 3 people immediately fake medical emergencies to sneak back downstairs. You consider joining them. By mid-afternoon, there's still no attack. You're sunburned, your boots are beginning to chafe, and your only source of entertainment is watching a cat methodically knock things off the battlement. It's then that a rider approaches the enemy camp. A herald? A messenger? He waves a white cloth dramatically, but trips over his own banner. This moment will not be remembered in legend. As the sun starts to set, you head back down, trading shifts with the night crew. Your body aches, your stomach grumbles, and someone hands you a bowl of what they claim is stew. You do not ask follow-up questions. In the distance, the enemy lights fires. Their torches flicker like stars on the hillside. It's beautiful in a they're probably going to catapult dead cows at us tomorrow kind of way. You lie down in your makeshift sleeping corner, a pile of hay, a scratchy blanket, and a vague hope that the latrine doesn't overflow tonight. You close your eyes. For now, the walls hold, but morning always comes. You wake not to trumpets this time, but to the unmistakable smell of pickled feet. Or maybe it's just someone's socks. Either way, the scent hits you like a trebuchet to the face. Your mouth is dry, your back is sore, your optimism is somewhere else entirely. The castle courtyard is already a chaotic ballet of half-awake humans, doing their best to look useful. A boy drops a pail of water. Someone's trying to corral chickens into the chapel. And a woman is loudly arguing with a knight about whether her donkey counts as a strategic asset. You shuffle past a line of barrels, their contents unknown and best left that way. Most are filled with rainwater, or so you hope. You wash your face quickly, avoiding eye contact with the water surface, because once you see what's floating there, it's all over. The siege may be underway, but daily life in the castle hasn't just stopped. You're still expected to do your share of the chores, meaning lots of sweeping, carrying things, and being yelled at by people who outrank you, which is basically everyone. The chamber pots won't empty themselves, and yes, there's a designated corner of the wall for that. No, it's not private. You pass a pile of rotting vegetables meant for the pigs, though you're fairly certain someone tried to cook with it yesterday. The castle cook is nothing if not resourceful. She's currently elbow deep in a barrel of barley, muttering something about stretching the stew for another week if it kills us. Comforting. Historians still argue whether siege conditions truly degraded as fast as some chronicles claim. Many medieval accounts were written after the fact, often exaggerated by monks with a flair for the dramatic. But there's no denying that things got funky. Close quarters, poor sanitation, and limited food don't exactly make for an Airbnb-worthy experience. You retreat toward the Great Hall for a morning briefing, if you can call it that. The lord of the castle stands at the head table looking stern and dramatically windswept despite being indoors. He's holding a very small map and pointing at it like it's a treasure. Nobody can really see it, but everyone nods anyway. Next to him, the steward lists the remaining food stores: 2 sacks of oats, 4 wheels of cheese, 1 barrel of salted fish, and something ominously labeled mystery meat June. The mention of June doesn't inspire confidence, as it's currently October. You're assigned to wall duty again, but before you go, someone hands you a thick bundle of cloth soaked in vinegar and instructs you to tie it around your face, just in case the latrine's back up again. You comply. It doesn't help. Outside on the battlements, you fall into the rhythm of siege life. Scan, pace, sigh, repeat. The enemy has grown bold today. You spot a few of them, archers perhaps, poking their heads up behind hastily built mantlets. They don't fire. They just look. One even waves. You wave back. Why not? Your friend Edgar joins you on the wall. He's chewing something stringy and unidentifiable. "Found it in my boot," he says proudly. You nod and pretend not to gag. Edgar tells you about a cousin who survived a siege once, claimed he made a fortune selling bootlaces dipped in gravy. "People will eat anything," Edgar says. You believe him. A man carrying a sack of feathers stumbles past. No one asks why. It's probably for the Fletchers, or maybe the Lord wants a softer throne. You've learned not to question strange tasks in siege conditions. You glance down at the courtyard again. A young girl is trying to teach her cat to fetch stones. The cat is not participating. Historians note that during prolonged sieges, especially in wealthier castles, a strange sense of routine often took hold. People found ways to pass the time. Songs, games, arguments about saints, and bad poetry. You've already heard one too many lute renditions of The Cow Fell in the Well this week. At midday, you're given a break. You sit in the shade of a half-broken tower stairwell and eat a stale hunk of bread. It's dry and may contain gravel. You don't ask. You stare at the sky for a while, watching the clouds. One looks like a loaf of bread. One looks like a battering ram. You don't know which is more worrying. Someone nearby starts telling a ghost story about a knight who haunts the latrines. You tune it out until the part where the ghost steals warm cloaks. That's too specific to be fake. As evening approaches, the castle chapel bells toll slowly, more for morale than prayer. You're not especially religious, but you say a little something to whoever's listening anyway. Just one more day without the goats escaping again, please. You return to the barracks area, which is really just a series of shared straw piles and angry whispers. Someone's taken your blanket. Again. There's a knock at the inner gate. A messenger, real or fake, is demanding parley. The Lord refuses, but the man outside continues to sing what sounds like an insult set to the tune of a wedding hymn. A few people clap. By nightfall, the castle is relatively quiet. Just the occasional clang of a dropped sword, the rustle of rats, and the never-ending snoring from 3 beds over. You try to sleep, but the smell is back. Pickled feet. You pull your vinegar cloth tighter and sigh. You're jolted awake before dawn by someone shouting, "Boiling oil duty!" Which, frankly, sounds like a prank. But it's not. You rub the sleep from your eyes and stumble out into the torchlit corridor, where you're handed a wooden bucket filled with something hot, sticky, and unsettlingly yellow. Technically, it's not oil. Not always. Boiling oil was expensive, and most castles didn't waste real oil on intruders unless absolutely necessary. What you're carrying might be animal fat, or a mix of sand, water, and wood ash. Whatever was available thickened into a caustic stew. The goal is pain, not culinary quality. You haul the bucket up the narrow stairs to the battlement, passing a man with a crate of rocks and another cradling a dead goose. The goose apparently is for special occasions. You hope that means later dinner, not later weapon. Up top, the air is brisk, the sky still dim. You set the bucket down carefully beside the murder hole, a slit in the ceiling of the castle's gate tunnel below. It's designed for moments just like this, when invaders push toward the gate and someone like you gets to dump something very unfortunate on them. A knight points at the parapet, where a crude pulley system is being tested by 2 exhausted teens. It's supposed to hoist heavier buckets. It creaks ominously with every tug. You make a mental note not to stand underneath it. Historians still argue whether boiling oil was actually common in sieges, or just a scary story passed around for dramatic effect. What's more likely is a rotating stew of hot water, lye, tar, sand, or even quicklime. It didn't matter much what it was, so long as it was hot, heavy, and made attackers regret their life choices. Suddenly a lookout shouts, "Movement!" and you lean over the crenellation with the others. Below, enemy soldiers are assembling large shields, pavises, preparing to push forward in formation. They look like a slow, angry tortoise. You grab a ladle. The next few minutes are tense. The enemy advances in jerky bursts, protected behind their pavises. Archers from your walls fire arrows down. A few hit. Most clatter harmlessly against the shields. Then one of the attackers makes the mistake of peeking out. Your neighbor promptly drops a chamber pot's contents on him. He retreats. Quickly. A younger boy beside you yells, "Ready!" and tips his bucket. A steaming splash hits the tunnel floor below. The enemy soldiers hesitate, unsure what just fell. Then one sniffs and yells, "Is that cheese?" It might be. You don't ask. In moments like these, the violence isn't glamorous. It's awkward, messy, surprisingly slippery. Someone drops a rock too early and it bounces off the gate, narrowly missing your foot. Another man accidentally sloshes hot water on his own tunic. The smell of singed wool fills the air. A siege, it turns out, is often a comedy of errors with fatal consequences. You're waved over to help with the special barrel, which turns out to be a sloshing container of animal entrails, aging in the sun for days. Your job? Tip it onto the heads of anyone attempting to set fire to the door. You steel yourself, lift, and pour. It lands with a wet thud. Someone down below screams. Someone else retches. You don't blame them. Historians have records of all sorts of strange substances hurled in defense. Dead animals, manure, wasps' nest, even beehives. One particularly eccentric lord allegedly commissioned a contraption to catapult spiked balls wrapped in tar-soaked linen. It caught fire halfway through a test launch and singed off half his beard. You're beginning to see how that might happen. Between attacks, the wall crew catches its breath. A girl no older than 13 brings up more fuel for the fire pots. Bits of cloth dipped in pitch. She hums a tune that sounds oddly like a lullaby. Everyone pretends it's not chilling. An hour later, the attackers retreat. For now. You slump against the stone wall, your face sweaty, your arms sore, and your tunic irrevocably stained. A pigeon flaps down beside you, completely unbothered, and begins pecking at a bit of something on the floor. You decide not to investigate what it is. Below, the battlefield is littered with the evidence of a morning gone sideways. Broken shields, a single boot, and what might be someone's lunch, still in its cloth wrap. The captain strolls past and nods approvingly. "Well hurled," he says. High praise. You're dismissed until the afternoon shift. You trudge back downstairs, stomach rumbling, shoes squelching unpleasantly. Inside the hall, someone is trying to scrub blood off a tapestry featuring saints. It's not going well. You sit on a bench near the hearth and remove your boots. One toe is now purple. It feels heroic in a deeply avoidable way. As you chew a corner of cheese and stare into the fire, you wonder how many days are left. How many more buckets? How many more weirdly creative things people will find to throw from the walls? The truth is, no one knows. Not even the Lord, not the captain. Not even that smug pigeon now roosting smugly on the rafters. You sigh, lean back against the wall, and close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. The next thing you hear is someone shouting, "Where's the goose?" You're back on the wall. This time with a bow in your hands, rain trickling steadily down your neck, and a damp sleeve that won't stop slapping your elbow. It's archer duty, and unfortunately it's raining hard enough to soak your socks, but not hard enough to cancel the whole siege. You pull your hood tighter, glance at your bow, and sigh. It's strung, but barely. Wet bowstrings are the enemy. Water loosens the fibers, saps the tension, and turns your once proud longbow into an angry stick. You wiggle your fingers, already numb. The arrows lie beside you in a makeshift trough, each fletching now soggy and sulking. A fellow archer beside you mutters, "Nothing flies straight in this." You nod. His arrows are already warping, and his quiver has more mold than feathers. Still, you load up, because the alternative is listening to the guy behind you. Tell another story about the time he hit a sparrow mid-flight at 50 paces. For the 5th time. Today. Historians still argue whether archers in sieges were used more for direct combat or as moral support, spraying arrows to keep heads down rather than landing perfect shots. But you know firsthand, even if your aim's off, nothing makes people more hesitant to climb a ladder than the thwip of arrows flying overhead. You lean out over the parapet slightly, scanning the field. The enemy has shifted tactics. They're not advancing today, they're laying something out. Big wooden planks, crisscrossing like a puzzle. Maybe they're building a platform, or worse, a mantlet on wheels. Nothing good rolls into a siege unless it's a food cart, and they're not delivering snacks. Rain drips down your nose. You wipe it away with a sleeve that's already wetter than the moat. Speaking of which, someone below just slipped into that moat trying to retrieve a javelin. He emerges covered in green goo, looking less like a soldier and more like a swamp legend. His comrades cheer, half mocking, half jealous he got a bath. A shout breaks through the drizzle. Arrows ready. You notch one, squint, and loose. It sails in a graceful arc and lands with a soft plop 3 feet from the wall. You pretend that didn't happen. Another volley is ordered. This time, you aim a little higher. The arrow vanishes into the mist. Someone on the opposing side shouts something rude in a dialect you can't quite identify, but the tone is universal. Someone behind you calls back, "Nice helmet!" Because that's the level of wit you can muster after 3 days of sleep deprivation and boiled cabbage. Suddenly, a drumbeat begins. Slow, steady, ominous. The attackers are trying to psych you out. It works a little. Mostly because it's in sync with the throbbing in your big toe. You duck behind the battlement as a few return arrows clatter against the stones. One zings off your helmet and bounces into the cooking fire. That's someone's soup ruined. Another fun fact, arrows are reusable, sort of. After each exchange, younger lads are sent out at night to retrieve what they can. They come back with bundles of bent shafts, bloody feathers, and once, a live frog. You're not sure what the frog was doing, but he's now the castle's unofficial mascot. You lean on your bow and chat with the nearest archer. He's named Gerald, has no teeth, and claims he once met the queen. Not a queen, the queen. You ask which one. He says, the short one with the dog. You stop asking questions. Lightning flickers in the distance. The storm is getting closer. Your captain calls for the archers to rotate out. You hand your bow off to the next unfortunate soul, whose first reaction is to sniff it. You don't ask why. Maybe he's checking for quality. Maybe he's just weird. Back on the ground, you wring out your tunic and check your fingers for splinters. You've got 3. One's already turning black. Probably fine. The Great Hall is buzzing with other soggy defenders. People warming their hands by the hearth, comparing bruises, and swapping guesses on what the enemy is building. One theory is a siege tower. Another says it's a large musical instrument. You pitch the idea that it might be a traveling puppet show. No one laughs. At dinner, the food is something. It's warm, which is a win, and it contains barley. Also a win. You think you taste pigeon. That part's a mystery. You sit near the hearth again, boots steaming, watching someone try to dry out their arrows over the fire. It goes about as well as you'd expect. 2 snap, 1 bursts into flames, and the 4th lands in the stew. Nobody says anything. Historians note that in some sieges, castle defenders would spend entire days with bows in hand, only to fire a handful of arrows. Fatigue, poor equipment, and weather often rendered them more symbolic than effective. Still, you do it, because it's what's expected, and because it keeps your mind off the fact that tomorrow might involve much worse. You retire early, feet blistered, eyes heavy, and dreams filled with wooden wheels and slippery arrows. Tomorrow you'll check the string. Tomorrow, maybe it flies straight. You wake up with a start. Not to war horns, but to the scent of something edible. Sort of. It smells vaguely of burnt oats, overcooked onion, and hope. The kitchen is still cooking. Your stomach growls audibly, loud enough that the boy next to you in the straw pile mumbles, "Shut up!" before rolling over and pulling a tattered cloak over his head. You sit up, scratch the back of your neck, and debate whether to change your socks. You decide against it. They're technically one with your feet now. You shuffle toward the kitchen hearth. Even during siege conditions, someone still has to keep people fed. And that someone is an elderly woman named Maud, who once fended off a raiding party with a ladle. At least according to Maud. She's stirring a pot of something brown, steaming, and oddly elastic. "Barley stew," she says proudly. You nod and accept the bowl because asking what else is in it might make it worse. It's hot, that's enough. Around the kitchen, people are busy. A pair of servants peel turnips while another carefully scrapes mold off a cheese wheel with the concentration of a monk restoring a fresco. A line of kids file through for breakfast, some of them official pages, others just small enough to be mistaken for apprentices. Historians still debate how well-fed defenders were during prolonged sieges. Some castles had extensive food stores and planning, others not so much. But there's general agreement that creative substitution was the norm. If you've got a sack of barley, a lump of salt, and a very confused squirrel, you've got dinner. You sit near the hearth with your bowl and try to eat slowly, even though your brain is screaming to shovel it down before someone yells for latrine duty. Maud sits beside you, sighs, and mutters, "Used to be we had beef." She doesn't elaborate. After breakfast, you're conscripted to help reorganize the food cellar. A task involving heavy lifting, spider evasion, and labeling sacks that have lost their tags. One bag is suspiciously lumpy. Another is leaking what might be syrup. A third smells like apples and despair. In the corner of the cellar is a single keg labeled, "Do not open until victory." It's sealed with wax. You spend 10 minutes staring at it, wondering what could possibly be inside. Mead? Eels? A note that says, "Surprise?" You don't open it. Barely. Back upstairs, the castle cook has shifted to planning dinner. The options are limited. Salted fish with cabbage, or cabbage with salted fish. She flips a coin. It lands in the fire. A messenger bursts into the kitchen. "We've secured another goat," he announces. Maud groans. "Is it the goat or another goat?" "Another," he confirms, sounding unsure. The castle has a goat problem. There are only two, but they somehow manage to be in the wrong place at the worst time. One of them bit the priest yesterday. You're given the noble task of retrieving wild herbs from the courtyard's edge. It's risky, you'll be exposed, but Maud insists stew without greens is a moral failure. So, out you go. You crouch near the base of the curtain wall, plucking anything that looks vaguely edible. Sage, thyme, possibly moss? A pigeon watches you judgmentally from a windowsill. A guard nearby mutters, "If we last another week, we'll be eating the pigeons." You glance up. The pigeon flaps away. Smart bird. As you return, Maud inspects your bundle and nods. Good enough. You've earned turnip duty. She says it like it's a promotion. You spend the next hour carving oddly shaped roots into slightly less odd shapes. Your fingers prune. Your dignity evaporates. At midday, the hall fills with people again. Everyone craving hot food, even if it's the same 3 ingredients in rotation. The Lord and his household eat first. You get the 3rd serving round, which contains a suspiciously chewy texture that Maud waves off as fortifying. Someone begins singing in the corner. A lute joins in. The lyrics are mildly inappropriate and involve a knight, a chicken, and a missing sock. No one seems to mind. Morale, after all, is a seasoning of its own. Historians have pointed out that castle kitchens often became hubs of social life during sieges. While the battlements were dangerous and the Lord's Hall formal, the kitchens were warm, busy, and full of gossip. Today, the gossip is about someone sneaking bread to the catapult crew, illicit carbs being a serious offense. You return to Maud for a second bowl. She gives you a look but ladles it anyway. "You'll need it," she says. "Word is we're rationing hard tomorrow." You nod grimly and slurp it down like a knight slaying dragons with barley. Later, you help scrub pots. The smell of cooked cabbage has settled deep into your tunic, your hair, and your soul. You know it will never come out. You accept this as part of your siege identity. As the fire dies down, Maud sits beside the embers, peeling garlic. She's humming a tune older than the stones in the wall. You listen quietly. For a moment, the siege feels far away. Just crackling wood, a full stomach, and a woman humming over stew. It's the closest you've felt to peace in days. Then someone shouts, "Where's the goat?" The goat has escaped. Again. This time, it's made it all the way into the chapel. Tail high, hooves clicking defiantly on the flagstones before anyone even notices. You're not sure how it got past 2 guards, a closed door, and the cranky monk who sleeps in the vestibule, but here it is. Standing smugly in front of the altar, chewing on what appears to be a velvet cushion. You're summoned, of course, because you were involved last time, and because someone remembers that you once looked at the goat in a persuasive way. You accept your fate, pick up a half-empty grain sack, and head into the house of worship like a very tired shepherd. The chapel is dim, lit only by a few sputtering candles. Dust motes float in the air. The goat pauses mid-chew and gives you a look. The kind of look that says, "I have chosen violence today." You try speaking softly. "Come on then, let's not make this harder than it needs to be." The goat headbutts a reliquary. A crash echoes through the stone chamber, followed by the tinkling of ancient glass. You wince. That might have held a saint's tooth, or maybe a piece of finger. Either way, it's now part of goat history. Historians still argue about the reliability of relics kept in medieval chapels. Were they authentic? Were they just highly decorated souvenirs from pious vacations? Either way, your goat just made one holier. You dart forward with the grain sack, but the goat sidesteps like a tournament champion. It bolts through the nave, knocking over a chair, an unattended prayer scroll, and a very confused cat. You give chase, slipping on a discarded hymnal, and nearly face-planting into a baptismal font. By the time you catch up, the goat is halfway up the stairs to the bell tower. Someone is shouting, "Not again!" And you realize this has definitely happened before. You corner the beast near the bell ropes. It pauses, lets out a snort, and, because of course, nibbles the end of a rope just long enough to ring the bell. The entire castle stirs. A voice from below calls, "Is it an attack?" Another answers, "No, it's the goat again." Someone groans. You hear someone else place a bet on whether you'll fall off the stairs. Eventually, with a combination of coaxing, grain bribery, and blind luck, you wrangle the goat into a blanket, sling it over your shoulder like a reluctant sack of turnips, and make your way down. The crowd parts like you're a conquering hero, or a walking embarrassment. The Lord himself appears at the chapel door. He opens his mouth to speak, sees the broken reliquary, closes it again, and sighs. "Just put it in the stable this time." With a latch, you nod, retreating. Back in the courtyard, you deposit the goat into a makeshift pen, with a gate reinforced by a dozen bits of rope, a bent nail, and someone's belt. The goat immediately begins chewing the belt. You leave quickly. In quieter moments of the siege, when the arrows aren't flying and no one's arguing about how to load the catapult properly, strange things take center stage. Like livestock diplomacy. Historians note that animals were often present in castles during sieges. Chickens, pigs, oxen, and yes, goats. Not just for food, but sometimes for companionship, barter, or ritual. There are even accounts of goats being blessed before battles. You suspect this one is more likely to be exercised. As you walk away, you realize your foot is bleeding, probably from the stair chase, or maybe the goat bit you again. You check. Yep. One tiny, smug nibble mark. You rinse it in a bucket and slap on a cloth. By mid-afternoon, the chapel is being restored, which mostly involves sweeping broken bits into a box and pretending everything is fine. The priest gives a dramatic sermon about forgiveness, aimed entirely at the goat. You spend the next hour helping reinforce the pen, because no one wants a repeat performance tomorrow. You use extra rope. Then you use rocks. Then someone brings out a curtain rod. It's the most secure enclosure since the armory. Then, as if it hadn't just caused chaos, the goat lays down peacefully and falls asleep. You stare at it. It snores. You head back to the barracks exhausted. Your clothes are torn, your hair smells like candle wax, and your dignity is somewhere in the bell tower. Dinner is late, but when it comes, it includes a small, fresh biscuit from the kitchen. Someone hands it to you with a nod and says, "For bravery in the face of hoofed resistance." You accept. You sit in a quiet corner, nibbling your biscuit, watching the sun set through the narrow window slit. Outside, the enemy is mostly still. A few figures move among their tents, preparing for something, or maybe just trying to find their goat. You exhale slowly. You survived another day. You wake up to a feather in your mouth, which is not, you quickly realize, the poetic kind of awakening. It's the literal kind, because sometime in the night, one of the castle's messenger pigeons decided that your straw pile was the warmest place to perch. And it has opinions. The bird coos irritably and hops onto your chest, then flutters up and perches on a rafter beam, dropping what can only be described as a pointed insult onto your blanket. You sigh. It's far too early for this. Today you've been reassigned to pigeon duty, or as the captain called it, high-priority cross-wall communications. The truth is, you're being handed a pigeon, a scrap of parchment, and the vague hope that the bird knows where it's going. The pigeon's name is Ursula. She looks like she's seen things. You're not alone in this effort. Half a dozen other would-be handlers crowd into the rookery, a small, drafty room near the southern wall, filled with fluttering wings, droppings, and the distinct smell of panic. The castle's birdkeeper, a man named Clovis who wears 4 scarves and trusts no one, explains the procedure. You write a short message, roll it up, tuck it into the tiny scroll canister on Ursula's leg, then release her through the rooftop hatch. She will, theoretically, fly over the siege lines and deliver the message to a nearby friendly castle, or possibly the forest, or the sea. Ursula's record is mixed. Historians still debate the effectiveness of carrier pigeons during sieges. Some sources suggest they were reliable in peacetime, but almost useless once the sky filled with arrows, smoke, and hostile hawks. Others believe pigeons were secretly one of the most successful wartime communication tools, mostly because nobody suspected birds of espionage. You write a short note. Holding steady. Supplies tight. Spirits high-ish. Goat contained. For now. You roll it up and attach it to Ursula's leg. She pecks your finger. A good omen? Clovis nods solemnly and releases her into the sky. She flaps twice and lands immediately on the roof beam. You try again. This time she takes off, circles the tower once, and vanishes into the clouds. Success, you hope. Feeling oddly accomplished, you help feed the rest of the pigeons. They eat enthusiastically, pecking at dried grains and occasionally each other. One has a tiny wooden leg splint. Another wears a knitted feather warmer. You decide not to ask. You exit the rookery and squint at the cloudy sky. The enemy lines are still quiet, though you spot movement near one of their larger tents. Maybe they're planning something. Maybe they've started their own bird program. The idea of a siege duel fought by pigeons amuses you more than it should. Down in the courtyard, you return to the general hustle. A boy runs past carrying a helmet filled with soup. You hope that's not the new serving method. 2 women argue over which bucket of water is for cleaning and which is for cooking. No one seems confident. Near the north wall, you overhear someone grumbling about traitorous doves. Apparently, one of yesterday's pigeons came back with no message and a very full belly. Probably switched sides, the man mutters. Probably working for the other castle now. You nod sagely. Anything's possible during a siege. By midday, a scribe arrives with a reply, carried by a bird from a neighboring fortress. The message is brief. Reinforcements delayed. Hold 3 more days. Burn pitch tonight. Good luck. Burn pitch. That means the enemy might be planning a direct assault. Everyone tenses, but the captain calmly nods and starts assigning watch shifts. You're told to help prepare the signaling fires. Tall stacks of kindling soaked in tar, set near the outer battlements. If the attack starts at night, they'll be lit to blind the enemy and signal other outposts. You spend hours lugging barrels, coughing from the fumes, and accidentally smearing black streaks across your face that will not come off. Historians record that night sieges were rare but terrifying. Fire was one of the few ways defenders could disorient attackers. But pitch fires also backfired. If the wind changed direction, your own castle might be the one engulfed in darkness and smoke. As dusk settles, you're perched on the wall, watching the horizon. The wind is gentle, cool, and thankfully blowing away from the castle. The pitch barrels are ready. Ursula has not returned. The Lord makes a slow round along the ramparts. He stops beside you, offers a nod, and says, "The pigeon will make it." You smile weakly. He doesn't mention the reliquary. You sleep in your gear tonight, wrapped in a cloak that smells like vinegar and goat. Your dreams are full of wings. In the morning, you check the rookery. Still no sign of Ursula. But then, just before dawn, a flutter of feathers erupts from the tower roof. She's back. She lands on your shoulder like a tiny, judgmental angel. Her canister is empty. You sigh. But Clovis gasps. He pulls a second scroll from beneath her wing, hidden, protected, and still intact. He reads aloud, "Message received. Stay strong, keep feeding the pigeons." You look at Ursula. She pecks your ear. You consider this a win. The enemy is building something. You can feel it before you see it. From your perch on the outer wall, the usual morning quiet is broken not by clanging weapons or shouted drills, but by rhythmic thuds, steady, measured, unsettling. Someone's hammering, over and over. The sort of sound that means something large is being assembled. Something you won't like. You squint into the distance. Past the rows of canvas tents and smoke trails, you spot them. Workers hauling beams into place, erecting a tall wooden frame. It's skeletal for now, but even in its half-finished form, you recognize it. A siege tower, roughly 3 stories tall, wheels the size of barrels, a sloped roof for protection. Once it's finished, they'll roll it forward, push it against your walls, and send soldiers storming up it like ants up a bread loaf. You nudge the soldier beside you. You seeing this? He nods grimly, chewing something that might be dried apple or possibly bark. Looks like we're getting visitors. You watch as the enemy begins stretching oxhide across the front of the tower. Protection against fire arrows. Smart. Annoyingly smart. Historians agree that siege towers were among the most fearsome tools of medieval warfare. Designed to deliver troops directly onto battlements, they were rolling fortresses, terrifying in both form and function. But they were also logistical nightmares. Slow, heavy, and difficult to build in bad weather. You briefly hope for rain. Or termites. The captain orders everyone to double the oil reserves. Just in case. Your job is to help prepare countermeasures. First, caltrops. Dozens of tiny metal spikes, each designed to always land point up. You scatter them outside the wall in hidden patches, careful not to impale yourself in the process. One guy does. He now has a permanent limp and a new nickname. Spiky. Next, fire arrows. You and a dozen others spend the better part of an hour wrapping pitch-soaked cloth around arrowheads, then storing them in sand to keep them dry until needed. The whole room smells like a chimney. One misstep and the lot could ignite. No pressure. While you work, a small dog wanders in, sniffs a torch, and is quickly escorted out. That dog has no concept of health and safety. By noon, the tower's frame is nearly complete. The enemy paints a crude emblem on the front. An eagle, maybe? Or a very angry duck. It's hard to tell from this distance. You overhear a knight muttering that they'll try rolling it forward under cover of darkness, That means tonight might be your last chance to sabotage it. You're volunteered for the sabotage squad, partly because you're light on your feet and mostly because you're not important enough to be missed. You're given a blackened tunic, a coil of rope, and a pouch of smelly rags soaked in fish oil and vinegar. To mask your scent, they say. You hope that's the only reason. Just after sunset, you and 3 others slip out through a hidden postern gate. The air is cool. The moon is a slender crescent. You crouch low, moving from bush to bush, avoiding sentries and praying none of the enemy's dogs are awake. You get within 30 feet of the siege tower. It looms above you, enormous and incomplete, but menacing all the same. You pull out a small flask of oil and begin coating the lower frame. Another soldier wedges caltrops around the wheels. The third leaves a few crude surprises in the form of rotten meat stuffed with pungent herbs. The goal? Attract scavengers, or at least very confused enemy cooks. Historians debate the effectiveness of sabotage missions during sieges. Some believe they were rare due to high risk. Others cite multiple cases of small teams causing major setbacks, burning ladders, collapsing tunnels, or untying horses at just the right moment. You're hoping to join that latter group. Then comes the accident. One of your squad mates sneezes. Loudly. Painfully. The sort of sneeze that echoes off wood and stone and time itself. A shout goes up. You freeze. Torches flare. Footsteps approach. "Run!" someone hisses. You sprint for the tree line. Behind you, shouts multiply. Arrows whiz past. One thuds into a log beside your head. Another catches your cloak and yanks you backward. You tear free, stumble, and keep going. You reach the gate with a scrape on your arm, a bruised knee, and an overwhelming desire to never touch vinegar again. The others make it too. Barely. The postern slams shut behind you. The captain claps you on the back. Well done. They'll be swatting rats for days. You collapse near the fire, panting. Your cloak still smells like trout. The next morning from the battlements, you see the aftermath. The enemy is indeed distracted. Several soldiers are trying to clear out a family of raccoons that has taken up residence in the tower's base. One raccoon is wearing a helmet. You cheer quietly. The tower's progress has stalled. The sabotage worked. You reward yourself with an extra scoop of barley. It tastes like triumph. The moat smells worse than you do. And that's saying something, considering you haven't bathed in a week and yesterday you fell in a barrel of spoiled onions. But the moat. The moat is next level. You're standing knee-deep in the outer ditch with a shovel, a length of chain, and the worst job of the day, sabotage detail. Specifically, making the moat less useful for the enemy. When first dug, the moat was meant to slow attackers, trip up siege ladders, and maybe drown the occasional overconfident foot soldier. But after weeks of siege and rain, it's become less a defense and more a soup. Equal parts water, mud, food scraps, rotting debris, and the occasional dead fish that no one remembers putting there. Today's task is to thicken it. You're hauling broken carts, logs, and anything remotely floaty or pointy into the murky slop. The idea is to create hidden snags and obstacles that will trip up attackers as they wade in. It's less about stopping them and more about slowing them long enough for archers to line up their shots. Medieval efficiency. You dump a splintered bench into the water. It sinks halfway, then bobs back up looking strangely satisfied with its new job. Nearby, a man tries to toss in a stuffed mattress. It floats until it doesn't. Then it bubbles ominously and vanishes like it never existed. Everyone pauses. No one comments. Historians still argue whether moats were more symbolic than functional. In some regions, they were dry ditches, in others, deep trenches fed by nearby rivers or rain. Some were even stocked with fish to supplement food stores. Yours, if it ever had fish, now smells like they've unionized and gone on strike. You slosh through the mire with your shovel, nearly losing a boot in the process. It makes a sound that is definitely not legal in most musical scales. You tug hard and retrieve it, along with what might be a turnip or a very old sock. The captain oversees the operation from a safe distance. Dry-shod, arms folded, occasionally yelling, "Make it deeper!" Like you're carving a royal bath instead of wallowing in fermented despair. You're told to reinforce the moat banks with jagged stones and sharp stakes, angled outward so that anyone trying to climb in will immediately regret it. You position a row of splintered planks, drive them into the muck with a mallet, and wipe sweat from your brow using the cleanest part of your sleeve. It still smells like goat. Somehow. As you work, you catch snippets of conversation from other saboteurs. Think rats swim. Do you reckon if we pee in it, it counts as warfare? Do not touch that. I think it moved. By noon, you're exhausted, soaked, and coated in a grime that defies physics. You drag yourself out of the moat and collapse against a barrel, which turns out to be full of old cabbages. You don't care. It's solid and doesn't smell any worse than you. One of the younger squires brings bread and dried apples. You thank him. He says nothing, just hands you the food and backs away slowly, perhaps intimidated by the moat juice you now radiate. You eat gratefully, gazing at your handiwork. The moat now resembles an obstacle course from someone's fever dream. Sharp sticks, sunken wheels, slippery planks, and more sludge than water. You imagine enemy soldiers wading into it and getting stuck mid-shin, their boots pulled off, their pride sinking faster than their ankles. It's a comforting image. Later, back in the courtyard, someone suggests boiling herbs to purify your boots. You try it. Now they smell like moldy thyme. An improvement? Debatable. You pass a noblewoman holding her nose as you walk by. You smile politely. She does not smile back. Historians note that during long sieges, sanitation became as dangerous as swordplay. Moats often doubled as latrines. Disease spread fast. Dysentery, cholera, and other charming guests were constant risks. One chronicler wrote of a siege where the defenders succumbed not to blade, but to belly. You believe it. As evening falls, you're ordered to post a watch near the moat. Just in case. You sit on the edge, wrapped in a damp cloak, watching the dark water ripple faintly in the wind. A frog croaks, then another. You smile. Life finds a way. Suddenly, a rustle to your right. You grab your spear. Just a squirrel. It scampers past with something shiny in its mouth. Possibly a ring. Possibly a fragment of someone's spoon. Either way, it's better equipped than you. You hear distant laughter from the walls. Someone's telling a joke about a bishop, a butcher, and a duck. You miss the punchline. As the moon rises, you lean back against the cold stone and exhale. You've done your duty, the moat is ready, and you're never, ever touching that water again. You're sitting very still, your ear pressed against a wine barrel. This is not a new form of medieval relaxation. This is sapper watch, or as it's more accurately known, the art of listening very hard for people who are trying to murder you with a tunnel. Someone hands you a ladle. Not for drinking, though that's tempting, but for tapping the barrel now and then, listening for vibrations. The idea is that if enemy sappers are digging beneath the walls to collapse them, you'll hear them scratching or hammering below ground. So here you are, eavesdropping on dirt. You shift slightly and hear a faint rumble. You freeze. Was that footsteps? A breeze? Or just your stomach reminding you that barley stew is not a sustainable long-term diet? Historians still debate how often sapping tunnels were used successfully. Some records describe dramatic collapses, whole walls brought down by underground fires or carefully stacked timber supports set ablaze. Others suggest most tunnels caved in or were discovered early by counterminers, castle defenders who dug sideways in hopes of intercepting the attackers mid-tunnel, which sounds like a bizarre game of blind hide-and-seek with shovels. You knock twice with the ladle. Nothing. You listen again. Still nothing. Your companion, Milo, who once tried to use a frying pan as a helmet, sits beside you, yawning dramatically. I bet they're just napping down there, waiting for us to fall asleep. You raise an eyebrow. Do they even nap during tunneling? He shrugs. If they're professional, they do. Someone upstairs drops a bucket. The clang echoes through the barrel and sends both of you bolting upright. You knock it over in the process. Your heartbeat returns to something human after a minute or two. The captain comes by, chewing on a reed and pretending to care. Any signs? You shake your head. Keep at it. They're quiet, but they're persistent. He wanders off. Eventually, you rotate off the listening shift and report to the armory for sandbag duty. You haul dusty sacks to reinforce the suspected weak points of the wall, just in case the sappers do their job. Your arms ache, your back protests, and you've got a splinter in a place splinters were never meant to be. A mason nearby mutters, "Walls talk, you just gotta lean in." He's covered in lime dust and possibly having a slow breakdown. You nod respectfully and move on. By midday, your ears are still ringing from listening so long. Every creak and groan in the stonework now feels like a possible cave-in. You try not to think about it too hard. Later, you visit the library tower, not for reading, but because the high floor has an opening directly above the suspected tunnel area. You help lower a bucket of gravel with a hole poked in the bottom. The idea is that if it disappears unusually fast into the earth, the ground below might be hollow. It doesn't. It just gets stuck halfway down and then falls on a passing cook. You apologize. The cook doesn't look convinced. That night, the barrel is replaced with a drum. You take up your position again, ear pressed to the stretched hide, listening for anything, taps, scratching, or muffled curses in enemy dialects. You hear something, a creak, a hiss, wait, no. Just Milo, who has fallen asleep sitting up and is now snoring into a pillow made of old onions. At some point, someone decides to play a sapper song, a local folk tune about tunnelers sneezing and collapsing their own mine. It's got a catchy chorus and questionable lyrics about donkeys. You hum along, partly to stay awake and partly because it's oddly comforting. A messenger brings news from the wall. Another pigeon has arrived, this time carrying a tiny map and a very enthusiastic note. Help coming, hold fast. Eat something green if possible. You share the news with the others and someone immediately tries to chew a decorative ivy vine growing on the chapel wall. It ends badly. Back on your watch, the night deepens. Fog rolls in, quieting even the usual late-night curses from the barracks. You lie on your back in the cold tower room, one ear to the drum, listening. Still nothing. Still nothing. But that's the game. Sappers are slow, quiet, patient. And so you wait. And you listen. And every creak, every echo, every scrape might be the one that matters. You wake to silence, which by now you've learned is more terrifying than noise. Because when the enemy's quiet, truly quiet, it means they're up to something. You hurry to the battlements, tunic half-laced, boots unlaced, and hair very much unbrushed. The sky is overcast. The air is too still. Even the pigeons aren't complaining. Then you see it. In the center of the field below, planted like a gift from a very unhinged admirer, is a pig. More specifically, a severed pig's head, mounted on a pike, with a note. You stare at it for a full 30 seconds before turning to the soldier next to you. Is that new? He nods slowly. Real fresh. The captain arrives and inspects the scene through a spyglass. He lowers it, sighs, and mutters, "Well, at least it's not another goat." The note, once retrieved by a very brave or very unlucky volunteer, reads, "Let your walls fall faster than your morale. We'll take good care of your goats." It's signed with a crude drawing of a helmeted face and what may be a loaf of bread, or possibly an eggplant. Historians have a soft spot for siege gestures, bizarre exchanges that walk the line between threat and performance art. Dead animals, cryptic notes, offensive banners, and once famously an entire wheel of cheese catapulted with the words, "Tomorrow's supper." These weren't just about intimidation. They were psychological nudges. You're trapped, we're not. and we have time to mess with you. Back on the wall, the defenders debate what to do. One knight wants to return the pig, flambéed. Another suggests sending back a chicken with a wig. The Lord decides to do nothing. Let them waste their drama, he says. We'll keep our arrows sharp. You go to the chapel for a moment of peace. The goat is miraculously not inside. A small mercy. The priest is muttering something about signs and omens. You choose to interpret the pig as minor prank rather than apocalyptic portent. At lunch, the kitchen serves barley again. You don't even flinch. You just chew and pretend it's stew. Across the hall, a soldier with a flair for theater is reenacting the pig moment for a small audience. His pig impression is too realistic. Later, you're sent to the watchtower to help prep soft missiles. Not rocks or arrows, this time it's garbage. Rotten vegetables, spoiled meat, broken pottery, and whatever else smells bad enough to launch. The goal is demoralization, and if you're lucky, infection. You're handed a sack and told to pack it firm, but not too firm. You ask what happens if it's too firm. Then it doesn't splatter, someone says. Right. You nod as if this is normal. Historians still argue whether biological siege weapons, like diseased corpses or foul waste, were common or just exaggerated by chroniclers with vivid imaginations. Some castles flung dead animals to spread fear and stench. Others relied on sheer volume of insult. One report mentions a note written in human excrement. We, thankfully, are not doing that today. As evening falls, you help hoist a trebuchet arm back into place. It creaks, groans, then locks. Ready to send a sack of mashed turnips and fish bones across the field. Medieval warfare, it turns out, is part engineering, part chaos, and part compost. Just before sunset, another messenger arrives, this time from within. A spy, caught trying to sneak out a second note in his boot. He's recognized by one of the kitchen boys who says, "That's the man who stole Maud's cheese." Now that gets attention. The man is tied to a post, questioned briefly, and then given the chance to explain himself. He insists he was just delivering a love poem. The captain reads the poem. It begins with, "To the one who brews cabbage like a goddess," and ends with a drawing of what may be the enemy camp. You've read worse. The captain frowns and says, well, at least he's creative. They lock him up with 2 guards and 1 very large goose. The goose is not part of the sentence, but simply wandered in and refuses to leave. Night falls with unease. The pig still sits in the field, slowly decomposing in the moonlight. A reminder, a taunt. You lie in your straw bed, arms behind your head, listening to the distant creak of wheels and the flap of canvas. You wonder, was it a joke, or was it a warning? Either way, tomorrow you're going to need more vinegar. Your promotion comes with no ceremony, no title, and definitely no raise. Just a gruff, "You're in charge now," from a sleep-deprived officer, followed by a scroll listing very unreasonable responsibilities. Apparently, not dying 3 times in a row qualifies you to lead a night watch unit. You're now responsible for the rotation of 12 guards, 2 dogs, one of whom only responds to the name Sir Grulsalot, and a single torch that keeps going out if you breathe on it wrong. Authority, it seems, is mostly about carrying extra keys. You gather your squad at dusk. They're an eclectic group. 1 old enough to remember 4 kings, 1 young enough to cry at the sight of onions, 2 who don't speak the same language but communicate beautifully through exaggerated sighs, and Gerald, who has somehow reappeared, still chewing the same stick from 3 sections ago. You post the guards around the inner and outer wards, making sure no gate, corner, or suspicious shadow goes unwatched. You assign rotations, repeat them 3 times because no one listens the first time, and then realize you've been holding the schedule upside down. Night watch, in theory, should be uneventful. But in a siege, it's the moment when imaginations bloom. Every twig snap becomes a saboteur, and every owl is a scout. Every drifting cloud is maybe, possibly, a trebuchet in disguise. You settle into the gatehouse with a blanket, a short sword, and a questionable mug of something someone called fortified cider, which tastes like despair and herbs. Outside, the mist curls low over the ground, and the torches flicker like they're nervous. Historians note that medieval night watches were often manned by the least injured or most alert soldiers, and that bells, horns, and even barking dogs were part of the standard alert system. You have bells. You have dogs. You do not have alert soldiers. Midnight rolls in like a damp sigh. You patrol the wall. Gerald hums a tune with no discernible melody. The old knight tells a story about guarding a bridge that no one ever crossed. The boy who cries at onions falls asleep standing up. You poke him gently with a broomstick. From the eastern tower, a guard yells, "Movement!" You rush over, weapon drawn. It's a flag. Flapping in the wind. You all stare at it for a long time. Then someone salutes it, just in case. You sigh and mark down false alarm number 7. A soft thump behind you. You whirl. It's the goose again. Still following that traitor from last night, the guards have started calling it the Warden. It honks ominously. You return to the inner ward, lighting another torch. It sputters. You curse quietly, then you catch a sound. Scraping. Faint, repetitive. You raise your hand. Everyone freezes. Then a cat sprints across the courtyard with a rat dangling from its mouth. The scraping was the rat being dragged. You cheer quietly. That cat is the only one getting results tonight. Around 2 a.m., fog thickens, visibility drops, and your feet begin to feel like cold porridge. You make your rounds again, this time with Sir Growlsalot. He barks at a pile of straw, a boot, and a torch. You mark down bark-worthy threats. 3. Important documentation. You pass the chapel. A candle is still burning inside. You poke your head in. Just the priest, snoring on a pew with a scroll over his face and an empty mug nearby. You let him be. If anyone deserves a nap, it's the man who tried to exorcise the goat last week. Back at the gatehouse, you find a plate left by Maud. It's not stew, it's something else. Hard to identify. Rectangular, crunchy. You bite it. It cracks like a roof tile. You smile. Promotion does have perks. Just before dawn, a lookout calls. Light on the hill! You rush up the tower. Far off, a single flame dances. A signal? A campfire? You're not sure. You log it anyway. There's comfort in the paperwork. Even if it's just scribbled charcoal on the back of a dried fish wrapper. As the sun begins to rise, barely aglow through the cloud cover, you blow your whistle 3 times to signal shift end. The guards groan, stretch, and shuffle off like ghosts toward the barracks. You watch them go, then lean against the stone wall, sipping the last of your fortified cider. It's still awful. You didn't fall asleep. No one died. The gates are still closed. That, in siege terms, is a flawless shift. A small voice calls from behind you. Sir Growlsalot is in the chapel again. You sigh, pick up your keys, and begin walking. You're halfway through a crust of stale bread when the shouting starts. Fire! Fire near the armory. You don't finish the bread. You bolt up from the bench, knocking over a bowl of something that might have been soup or might have been glue. Down the corridor, smoke is already curling under a doorway like a lazy ghost with very bad intentions. You grab a bucket. So does everyone else. It's not organized. It's a mad scramble of yelling, sloshing, slipping, and at least one guy throwing what he thought was water, but turned out to be pickled turnip brine. It does not help. The fire is licking its way up a stack of spare shields near the main stairwell, too close to the armory where barrels of pitch are stored. Flammable barrels, with lids that don't seal properly. You join the frantic bucket line. Water is hauled up from the courtyard well and passed hand to hand, sloshing and spilling with every step. Someone falls. Someone else steps in it. Someone yells, "Who let the goat out again?" And a scream follows. Sure enough, the goat is out again, and it's standing in the middle of the chaos, calmly chewing on a singed tapestry. You consider grabbing it but decide against it. You have priorities. The goat is not one of them. Not today. You throw your bucket at the flames, it hisses but doesn't die. A knight appears in his nightshirt, sword in one hand, teacup in the other, and demands to know who's defiling the corridor with heat. No one answers. Everyone's too busy not letting the castle burn down. Historians tell us that medieval castles often had very little in the way of organized fire safety. Kitchens were notoriously dangerous. Open flames everywhere, straw bedding, wooden beams, and too many people in wool tunics. Fires were an ever-present threat, and in sieges, a disaster waiting to happen. The steward arrives red-faced and breathless, barking orders. Keep it away from the pitch. Line the south wall. Use sand. Not water on the tar. Right. Sand. You bolt back down the hall to the storeroom, where several sacks of dry earth are kept for just this reason. Or maybe for throwing at people who disobey curfew. Either way, you haul 2 up the stairs, muscles screaming. Someone starts a line for sandbags. It's slow but working. The smoke thickens. You tie a rag around your mouth. It smells like vinegar and onions. You tell yourself it's a protective measure and definitely not just your laundry situation catching up with you. You slip once, land hard, get up, and keep moving. Above you, the flames have reached a tapestry. A lovely one. Embroidered with a scene of St. Michael slaying a dragon. It melts in seconds. St. Michael's face warps into a scowl. You feel that in your soul. The bucket line grows more efficient. Water and sand fly in tandem. Someone tries to beat a flame with a ladle. Maud, the cook, hurls an entire cabbage at the blaze. You don't ask why. The fire recoils slightly, perhaps out of confusion. Then, finally, a sizzle, a hiss, a sputtering pop. The flames subside. Steam fills the air. The room glows orange, then fades into blackened damp. You cough twice and sit down on the floor, still holding a half-empty bucket like a knight's ceremonial chalice. The steward pats your shoulder. We only lost 1 barrel of pitch and 3 chairs. He sighs. And the tapestry. That was my grandmother's. The rest of the day is spent in cleanup. You scrub scorched stone, sweep up ash, and help drag the ruined shields out into the courtyard. A pigeon lands on one of them, surveys the damage, and promptly poops. Nature's final word. Someone attempts a head count of the fire team. The numbers are off. Turns out one guard climbed into a barrel and stayed there the whole time. He claims he was guarding the reserve vinegar. You assign him goat watch duty. The Lord himself tours the damage. He grunts once, nods at you, and says, "Could have been worse." Good work. You beam. Then he turns and mutters, "Tell the goat if it chews another relic, I'm sending it to the enemy camp." You return to the great hall that evening smelling of smoke, your face streaked with soot. Maud presses a warm bowl into your hands. It's barley, of course it is, but it's warm, and the castle didn't burn down. That's 2 wins. Across the table, someone starts retelling the fire story. It's already grown. Now there were 3 goats, a dragon-shaped flame, and Gerald saving the day with a soup pot. You decide not to correct them. As night falls, you lie back in your straw bed, staring at the rafters. They're still there, unscorched. The goat snuffles softly nearby, somehow back in the barracks again. You let it be. Maybe it earned that today. You drift off to sleep with a scent of ash in your hair and a strange sense of calm in your chest. You saved something today. You're halfway through your morning barley again when you hear hushed voices and a name whispered like someone just dropped it in a well. Your name. You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth. Across the great hall, 2 guards are deep in conversation, eyes flicking toward you. You catch snippets. Bribed. Enemy offer. Can't be sure. And then, your best friend's name. You feel the barley go cold in your mouth. You've known them since before the siege started. You hauled buckets together, shared stale apples and inside jokes. They once punched a squire for calling you soggy boots. And now they might be trading secrets for a promise of survival. You try to shake it off. Rumors are currency in a castle under siege. The truth gets stepped on, rolled up, soaked in vinegar, and launched out of a catapult. Still, you go looking. They're not at the barracks, not at the wall, not in the kitchen, where Maud is boiling something that smells both sweet and mildly threatening. Eventually, you find them near the old well tower, sharpening a blade with more force than precision. "Hey," you say. They glance up, blink, and smile like everything is normal. "Didn't hear you coming." You sit on the stone ledge beside them. There's an awkward silence. Then you ask, "Everything good?" They pause. Just a heartbeat too long. "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" You stare out across the courtyard, watching a dog chase a chicken in slow, determined loops. You nod. Just checking in. Historians write about betrayal in sieges as inevitable. Sometimes it was desperation, hunger-twisting morals. Other times it was opportunity or false hope, or blackmail. There's even an account of a squire who opened a gate because someone outside promised him a pony. Spoiler, no pony. You don't want to believe it. But that evening, a message is intercepted, tucked into a water flask being passed between the walls. It's small, it's smudged, but it bears a name. Your friend's name. Right there. In the curled, cautious handwriting you've seen, scrawl grocery lists and goat complaints. The message is vague, something about tower schedules and guard rotations. Nothing too damning on its own. But combined with the whispering, the vanishing, the evasive smiles, it's enough to earn suspicion. The captain summons you. Closes the door, lowers his voice. "You know them better than anyone," he says. "I need to know if they're with us or not." Your mouth is dry. The fire crackles too loud. You think about the barley stew you once shared. The goat rescue. The dumb songs sung while sharpening pikes. "I don't know," you whisper, and you mean it. That night, your friend is held under loose guard. Not a cell, not a dungeon, just watched, observed, questioned gently. They insist it's a misunderstanding. They say the note wasn't theirs. They say they're being framed. They say you can vouch for them, and you want to, but you're posted to the North Tower for the late shift, and your head's buzzing louder than the wind. You can't shake the image of that message. The handwriting, the missing hours. The way their laugh didn't sound like it used to. Your shift partner says, "Rough day?" You just nod. Below, the enemy camp is quiet again. But the kind of quiet that you now know hides messages and shadows, and the slow tick of trust unwinding. By dawn, you return to the courtyard and find your friend already released. Clear technically, no proof, no confession. Just the warning glare of the captain and a permanent watch list. They look at you. They know you didn't vouch. You both pretend nothing has changed, but something has. You don't sleep much that night. The wind howls outside like it knows something you don't. The straw beneath you scratches like 1,000 whispers, and every creak in the rafters sounds like betrayal tiptoeing past. You rise before dawn and climb the tower stairs just to breathe. From this high, the siege seems almost peaceful. Just little fires flickering in the enemy camp, tiny dots moving between tents, the ghostly shapes of ladders stacked too neatly near the tree line. But then the horn blows. Not your horn. Theirs. It's low, guttural, and wrong. Not a signal for parley or a bluffing gesture. It's the kind of sound that means, this is it. You rush down, alarm bells ring. Archer snapped posts. The steward is yelling about pitch, buckets, rope. Somewhere, someone is still yelling about the goat. You don't stop to ask. The siege tower is moving, creaking, groaning, inching its way across the mud-slick field like a beast on wooden legs. Archers rain arrows from behind its hide-covered front. Shields move in tight formations behind it. The whole world feels like it's been pulled taut, waiting to snap. Your orders are clear. Hold the breach, protect the gate, and if all else fails, the tunnel. Yes, that tunnel. The one behind the chapel. Narrow, steep, hidden for emergencies. You practiced crawling it once. It took 15 minutes, scraped your knees raw, and dumped you behind a thorn bush outside the south wall. Now it's the fallback. Historians describe these final moments as the grind point of sieges. When all the quiet boredom, the stew, the pigeons, the goat antics, they end. Everything collapses into minutes of chaos. Fights in hallways, collapsed stairwells, archers falling backward with arrows still notched, a knight swinging a broken table leg because his sword got stuck in a doorframe. You're stationed at the gate next to Gerald Maud, who insists on helping, and the man who once tried to use a carrot as a lockpick. You're not hopeful. Then the tower hits. The ground shudders. Wood splinters. The portcullis creaks like it's screaming. A battering ram slams into the gate. Once, twice, you brace. Third strike, it cracks. A hand reaches through, then a sword. Fall back, someone yells. You don't know who. Maybe you. Maybe everyone. You run. Through the chapel. Past the goat. Again. Down the side stairs, into the tunnel. It's darker than you remember. The air is damp, thick with mildew and regret. You crawl, the stone scraping your palms, heart hammering like a blacksmith's drum. Behind you, shouting, then silence, then more shouting. The tunnel turns sharply. You squeeze through. Boots slip. You grab at roots, stones, anything. It's terrifying. It's slow. It's the only way out. Then, light! The exit! You tumble out into the thorn bush just as another soldier stumbles out beside you. They're bleeding from the ear, grinning like a lunatic, and say, I told you we'd need this stupid tunnel. You help them up. You look back at the castle, still standing, barely. Smoke trails from one tower. The gate is lost, but not the wall, not yet. Around you, others emerge, some gasping, some crying, some still yelling about the goat. The captain appears, eyes wild, armor dented. We regroup, he says. We hold. And so you do. You wrap a cloak around someone sobbing. You press cloth to a wound. You hand a water skin to a child with ash on their cheeks. And slowly the night breathes. You sit at the edge of a hollow, watching the sun rise over fields that once shimmered with wheat, and now are trampled flat by boots and wheels and history. The air is cool again. For the first time in days, it smells like pine, like earth, not pitch or goat or fire. Your muscles ache. Your head buzzes with leftover adrenaline. But for this moment, you're safe. The grass is soft. The morning breeze is kind, and your eyes are so heavy. Behind you, voices murmur, quiet, tired, human. No horns, no drums, just the rustle of cloaks and the gentle clink of gear being put down instead of lifted up. You let yourself lie back, arms sprawled, and watch the clouds drift slowly across a sky you thought you'd never get to see from this side again. The siege isn't over. Not yet, but you are. For now, and that's enough. So close your eyes. Feel the weight leave your shoulders, even if just for a while. You've earned rest. You've earned quiet. Let the wind carry you. Let the walls fade. Let the world hush. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.